and which is funny because I don't get accused of moderation very often. And I always sit on the far right of the table. Kind of a running gag there. So I would like to have our other panelists introduce themselves. And real fast, what we're here for is the Monster Hunter International anthology, which is coming out next month, the Monster Hunter Files. And full anthology set in my Monster Hunter universe, and all the other panelists are people who are in there. We're still missing one person, so hopefully she'll show up soon. Jody will show up soon. So we'll go ahead and we'll start down at the end with Faith and have all these guys introduce themselves.
Hi, I'm Faith Hunter. I have been writing all sorts of things since 1989, from police procedurals as Gary Hunter, and yes, the sex change operation was painful but totally worth it, to anything from as Gwen, from medical mystery series to standalone thrillers, and now as Faith Hunter, I write the Jane Yellow Rock series and the Soulwood series, and am absolutely thrilled to be a part of someone else's universe.
Hi, I'm Jim Bucher. I'm the author of the Dresden Files, the Cinder Spires, the Codex Alera. Larry gave me a chance to come play in his world, and I thought that would be a lot of fun, so I did.
I'm Jonathan Maberry. I'm the author of the Joe Ledger series, the Rock Room series, and a bunch of other stuff, including some Marvel comics. And Larry and I keep batting characters back and forth between our worlds, and we're having a bunch of fun with that.
Awesome to be right on time. Hi, I'm Jody Lynn. I write science fiction and fantasy novels, most of them humorous, and I'm very pleased to have gotten a chance to play in Larry's wonderful world.
So my name's Quincy Jay Allen. I'm fanboying just a little bit to be up with these folks. I write the Blood War Chronicles, which is a steampunk western fantasy and then an action thriller series with an alien ex-government assassin, and Larry gave me a chance to write in his world, and it's been a blast. It's a lot of fun.
Thanks, guys. Very talented bunch of authors. So we're going to start. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of behind the scenes of how this comes about and how these shared world anthologies happen. So the idea for the Monster Hunter anthology, actually the credit goes to the co-editor, a guy named Brian Thomas Schmidt, who's not here at DragonCon, but Brian's here in spirit. So what it was is he approached me one day and he said, hey, and he's an editor who has put together a whole bunch of different anthologies. And he approached me and he said, hey Larry, have you ever thought about doing an anthology and opening up the Monster Hunter universe to other writers? Because at that point I had already teamed up with Sarah Hoyt to do a Monster Hunter novel called Monster Hunter Guardian. We're co-writing. And so I said, yeah, sure, that sounds kind of fun. So we pitched it to Toni Weisskopf, the publisher at Baen Books, and she thought it was a great idea. And especially when we were like, hey, Toni, I bet we could get some like actual real authors to be in it. And she said, yeah, that sounds pretty cool. So Toni gave us permission, and me and Brian put together kind of a list of authors we knew. And the idea was I went with authors that I knew had either read the series or I thought they would be amenable to reading the series or getting into it. And we made a list. And also we went through and we picked out some people that were talented newcomers, and we just kind of went through and we made our invites. And normally it takes a little while to fill an anthology, and people are always like, hey, can I be in your anthology? Can I submit to it? Well, this one we never put out an open call because we filled it in like 20 hours. And so we sent out the initial email to our wish list of authors, and I think we got almost all of them. The only person I didn't get on the initial email because she was too busy was Laurel Hamilton. Because Laurel's just too damn busy. So, but now we got these really amazing writers up here, and you guys really want to hear from these guys because they're freaking awesome. And, no, they are. These guys are badasses, all right? These are some badass authors. And we got to recognize that. So I just want to say real fast, why don't you guys go, we're just going to go down the line. Why don't you guys tell a little bit about the story that you decided to write for this anthology? Just tell us a little bit about your story that you did. And I'll throw it up to whoever would like to start.
Everybody's looking at me.
Otherwise, poor Faith is going to have to go first every time.
Okay, I'm going to take the pressure off Faith. I decided I wanted to write a story about Sid, the janitor at Monster Hunter International headquarters in Cazador. The guy who has to clean up the messes that all the main characters are making and so on. And I gave Sid some appropriate challenges of his own to face while he was there, while the Monster Hunters were out busy, and I had a really good time writing it.
Actually, I'll make an editorial comment about each one of these as they go. And so Jim comes to me, and the first thing he says, okay, yeah, I'd love to do this, but I don't want to write about a big, like, well-known, well-established character. I would like to write about someone who's maybe a new character, not as well-known, like the janitor. And I was like, hell yeah! So it was amazing. And then I won't spoil it for you, but Jim introduced a new type of creature to the Monster Hunter universe, something that I had never thought of before. It was something distinct and original. And he asked about, will this work? And I won't spoil these for you because they're hilarious and they're awesome, and I have actually added them to the rest of the series because it was too awesome not to do. And so I won't spoil it for you guys.
Okay. My story is called Mr. Natural, and part of it was inspired by the fact that we drove to the Black Hills last year, and we went through the center of Minnesota, which is where Birdseye actually has its capital. We're driving through all these things, and I'm thinking, Jolly Green Giant, yeah. Trademarked, yeah. Well, there are all sorts of other kinds of Jolly Green Giants out there, and one of them is probably harassing the heck out of us right now. So I brought in an army nurse who was working with a bunch of people with the monster hunters, and kind of fed up with the hippies who are getting power from this amazingly weird creature. And it turned into a wonderful laugh. I thought it was a lot of fun. I had an enormous amount of fun doing it. And I think Larry was pleased with it, so I was really excited.
This is a fun one, because what happens is when you're doing these kind of anthologies, because as the guy that owns the world, you want to make sure that everybody doesn't waste their time doing something that you can't use. So you want to get kind of a basic pitch from them first. And so she came to me with Jody came to me with the Jolly Green Giant pitch with like the hippie commune growing around it, and also it's more of a period piece too, because we went.
Yes, Vietnam. Yeah. It's the Vietnam War. It's not modern day, but it's a nurse who came back. One of my friends admitted a few years ago that she was one of the people who was spitting and returning GIs.
Yep.
And I thought that was no. Believe me, you gasp now, but it was very common for the people who were protesting against the war to take it out on the people who were drafted and had no choice but to go. So it was one of those automatic things of we have an us and them, not necessarily that the them is inimical, but they're misguided. They really are. And so she has a few things to work out, and they have a few things to work out. But it's still an interesting piece. It takes place in 1974.
When she pitched this, it was like 1970 or
1974.
1974. Yeah. And Jody put this together, and then I read the story and loved it. It was absolutely awesome. And I think the things we had changed was we brought in a special task force unicorn angle to it. And so basically, her nurse and this group of soldiers had seen some things in Vietnam that got them attached to a special task force unicorn mission. Mm-hmm. That's why they got stuck for doing this, because therefore they were very expendable. And
highly expendable, and especially because they're working with the Native American spirit.
Yes.
Who looks
once
like
again, I don't want to spoil it for you, but another creature that had not shown up in the Monster Hunter universe before him. And I think Jody had a lot of fun with it. It was really cool. So it was a really good story. That's Mr. Natural. And thank you, Jody.
Thank you.
So Brian had asked me to write a story, and shortly thereafter, I was driving a book truck. I used to drive Kevin Anderson's truck across. I was heading to LA, and I'm heading through Utah, and there's a place called Goblin Hills, Utah. It's Goblin Hills National Park, beautiful rock formations. But it occurred to me it might not have gotten the name from the rock formations. And then I'd actually done some research, and there was actually one of my favorite patches in the world is the Las Vegas patch with Elvis, right? It's really cool. And I thought, well, what I wanted to do was a coming-of-age story. So it's about a couple of twin brothers who are about to turn 18, and they find out precisely why they are called the Goblin Hills, Utah. It's a lot of fun. I really had a blast writing that.
All right, this one was fun, because Quincy was one of the guys that we were originally putting together. I had not read Quincy's stuff at this point, but I knew Quincy from selling books at cons, and we'd spent a lot of time in booth together, and I knew he's a good dude. And so when Brian recommended his writing, I was like, okay, let's check it out. So he gave me the pitch, and it was kind of these two kids, and anytime you have an anthology about the universe, you want to kind of have some new people, you want to have some old people, you want to have some familiar characters. So this is two new guys. So Quincy writes this story, and it's really good, and it's actually really intense. It's an intense story. These two like 17.
Yeah, they're about to turn 18.
Yeah, so these two 17-year-old boys in the desert fighting these horrific monsters. Well, just so you guys know, since we've put out the e-arc and the arcs to reviewers and to the early buyers, which Bayan loves when you guys buy the e-arcs, it's awesome. So you guys started posting reviews, and everybody who reads anthologies tends to do these things where they post up like their 5 favorite stories or their 3 favorite stories. Across the board, Quincy, our talented new guy, is the dude that keeps showing up on every single one of those lists. Excellent story, and yeah, so thanks, Quincy.
My pleasure.
And so the rest of us hate you totally?
It all is
I
experience,
want to say
guys.
everybody's up here clapping about that, but we're all going, yeah. No, not really.
But
We're very glad.
But how can you hate Quincy? He's such a fluffy bunny.
Thank you, Jody.
So I'm the problem child? Yes. When I was talking with Brian initially, he said, I really want a Jane Yellowrock story. And I said, this is going to be a problem because I love Monster Hunters International, but please understand that Jane's a monster. Jane would be somebody they would be hunting, except that she's not out of the closet totally at this point in the series, so I can kind of slip that in, slip that by, but how are we going to make this work? So my outline process, I think, was like weeks with back and forth, and before we could come up with something that would work, and am I the only person that has a crossover in there? I think I am.
Yeah.
I think I am. Yeah, I could never quite make it work, so they have this special little slot for Jane. Oh, I lost this. Am I on? There we go. Okay, am I back on? All right, cool. Because I can stand up and yell, because I am the problem child. But with Jane, I went back a couple of books from where we are now and put a scene where Jane has gone home to the Appalachian Mountains, and there's this trail called, and I might get it wrong, but Tail of the Dragon. Any bikers in here?
Yes.
Tail of the Dragon, right?
Headed there next week.
It's absolutely spectacular. Oh my God. Because you're on the crest of a mountain. And I mean, the mountain is like as wide as the road. That's it, and it's sheer drops all the way around. And bikers like to see how freaking fast they can go. And when we took it last, we were in an RV.
That's awesome.
Yes, so this is where I had to put my story, because there's been no sort of monster hunter stuff in this part of the world where the bikers are the people who come, and these little tiny, it used to be mom and pop hotels that you now see closed everywhere. They're biker joints now. Big signs out front, bikers and dogs welcome, which is not to be insulting to anyone, because they want people to know that everybody's welcome, but especially the bikers and people who travel with critters. They are very open to people. Just come on in, they don't care who. So this is the world that Jane came from. This is where I wanted her to go back to and deal with monster hunters who are after the same people, creatures that she's after. And that was an absolute delight. So thank you for letting me be the problem child. I thoroughly love my story.
Editorially speaking, it was just really a good story. It was really awesome. So yeah, there was the back and forth, and it was the only crossover. But here's the awesome thing about crossover thing. So I'm assuming you guys are here, so most of you have read Monster Hunter, right? Okay. Now go buy Jane Yellowrock. Yeah, and actually, Faith, if you were to recommend your first book, so if they like this story, what's the first book they should buy?
The first book in the Jane Yellowrock series is called Skinwalker.
There you go. Yeah, it's a really good story. You guys will like it. So, yeah, John.
So, for my story, it's called Hitler's Dog. It's also a historical story. It's set during World War II. It's set in a remote spot in the mountains where certain types of prisoners are kept, and they're being forced to work on a special project for the Thule Society. And I had a lot of fun with that. it allows me to play with some of my favorite things. I'm a big history buff, big World War II buff, big weird science buff. I love stories about galvanization, and also it allowed me to play with my favorite character in the series, which is Agent Franks. I love these Agent Franks. The way I found out about Agent Franks, because he's the first character I knew about, because somebody said that I reminded them of Agent Franks when I didn't have my coffee.
Okay.
And having read the books, it's like, yeah, fair enough. Got that right. But it was fun because I did a little bit of a twist on how Franks gets into the story. And he can be a moderately cranky individual. So it was fun.
That's one way to put it.
Yeah. So it was fun to play with that. And it also deals with a bit of French folklore, borderline French history. There's a story in France about a monster that was in the countryside during Napoleonic times that was killing lots and lots of people. And they thought it was a werewolf, they thought it was different things. And so that legend plays into it too. And I don't want to give any spoilers, but it's a weird collision of history, weird science, and the life and times of Agent Franks.
I'll tell you guys, okay, so editorially, I was really excited about this one because before this, Jonathan and I had collaborated on a story for the Urban Allies anthology called Weaponized Hell. And the premise behind that anthology was the editor got the different authors to bring characters from their series, their own stuff, and then smush them together with another author and have like an adventure story with two of their main characters. And as soon as I heard about this, I was like, well, who else is involved? And I saw Jonathan, ooh. And I love Joe Ledger's story. I love DMS stories. And so I contacted him immediately. I was like, hey, dude, you want to bring Ledger? He's like, yeah, you bring Franks. Like, oh, yeah. So we did a collaborative story. Oh, man. And it was a lot of fun. And so that's called Weaponized Hell. It's in the Urban Allies. And so when he said that when we're doing this project and everyone's kind of staking out what they want to do, Jonathan says, I want Franks. I was like, okay, if anybody in here can write Franks and do Franks justice, it'll be Jonathan. And he did. And the way I pitched this story to people when I was on book tour going around and talking about this project was Agent Franks versus Nazis.
Yes.
As soon as you
I
say
want
that,
to see that happen.
okay, I'm in, yeah. And it's a great story. It's a great story, and it is probably one of the more violent stories in the book too, because there's a part at the end where Franks is just on a rampage, and I won't ruin it for you, but it's awesome. It's awesome. All right, so okay, so that's all right. So now I want to toss this out to you guys. Okay, so when you're writing as writers, so just real fast, because I love nuts and bolts writing stuff. You know, I love fan stuff, but I love nuts and bolts writing stuff. I don't know if you guys are aspiring authors in here, want to be authors. If you're trying to be a pro author, if this is interesting to you or not, but I find it fascinating, so I'm going to ask these guys. When you guys work in somebody else's world, how is it different? What are the challenges for you when it's working in somebody else's baby, somebody else's universe?
Well, that's practically since where I started out, was working with Anne McCaffrey and Piers Anthony, and since then John Rigo and a few other people. It is a lot of fun because the rules are set out for you. Now, the challenges are you have to please the readers. You have to come close enough to the style that the readers themselves are not going to be displeased by that. And you have to respect the sandbox you're playing in. But that said, it still gives you tremendous scope to explore as if you know the world really well, then you can bring out little facets of things that perhaps the original author didn't have the time to explore.
Or didn't even think of in most of these
Didn't even
cases.
think of it in many cases.
You guys came up with some really good ideas for me to milk for years.
I know Tony will be absolutely delighted to hear that.
We were all concerned about you, Larry.
But in the end, not only the original author has to be satisfied, the readers have to be satisfied. They have to feel that we're really getting into the world of Pern, Zan, Monster Hunters, and wherever else we've gone.
Yeah, I've done a lot of what's called media tie-in work, where you write in other people's worlds. I mean, I write my own stuff, but especially in short fiction, I've done a lot of, I've done like John Carter of Mars, G.I. Joe, Wizard of Oz. I recently did a Hellboy story. And actually, while I was writing it, I was thinking Hellboy and Agent Franks would be one hell of a
Yes.
Somehow that has to happen.
That would actually be a really good
That has to happen.
You have to know how to do that without getting sued.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we just did the first new anthology of Hellboy short stories. There's probably going to be another one, so I can put you in touch with Mike Mignola.
Mignola's a nice guy, man.
He is a great guy. I want to read that story. So when you're writing in someone else's world, you know, as Jody mentioned, you have to actually respect the world and respect the people who are reading it. Like, for example, one of my first media tie-in stories was a Wizard of Oz story. My first inclination, being me, is I wanted to write a story where the Tin Man got the heart of a serial killer and went on a rampage.
Of course.
That would be what I would want to read. But as I was getting ready to write the story, I realized that's not fair to the people who actually read the Oz story, who are kids. And, you know, it would be self-indulgent to do something like that. Wouldn't be respectful of the audience. So instead, I sat down and wrote I went completely out of my comfort zone. Sat down and wrote a story about a winged monkey girl whose wings were too small for her to fly. She's got magic traveling shoes. And even as I'm writing, I'm like, it was completely not what I had done, but it came to me, you know, it came through me by respecting the audience. And actually, that story wound up being accepted by I got a letter from the L. Frank Baum estate. They added that to the official chronology of Oz. I am not a guy given to tears easily. That one broke me. So when you're writing other people's worlds, you know, first you have to know the characters. You have to know the world. You have to be respectful of the author and what they say. And even though you want to try to write somewhat in the vein of, you don't want to copy an author's style, because it's either going to come off as an attempt to cheat and do that style, or it's going to come off as bad copying. So you want to write in the world of without trying to be a clone of the author.
You want to write from the spirit of.
You want to write from the spirit of, and it becomes fun to do that because you get to be creative with it. And sometimes, you know, as a fan of something, like even though I'm a professional, I also read fanfic. And I wrote fanfic when I was a kid. So there are times you want to write a story in another world, and here I'm getting a chance to do it. But it's got to be a story that doesn't reinvent their world and extends into a direction the author may not have chosen to go into, but you feel the audience the real fans would be receptive to. And that's the kind of the groove I got into with it, and it became then easy to write that story and a lot of fun to write it as well.
Oh, I think it's easier to write in somebody else's world. I mean, I don't think it's nearly as much as a challenge because, you know, at the end of the day, I can always say, I'm not responsible, it's his world. But if you don't like it, then take it up with Correia. It's not about me.
Roll it and break a bunch of stuff.
But also because he's already done the lion's share of the work. All I did was read it, which I did for fun anyway. So it appeals to the lazy writer in me, which constructive laziness has taken me far in my career. But what I really enjoy about it is we've already got parameters set up. We've already got things established. You know, I'm writing along and I've got, you know, I'm using a couple of Larry's characters. I use Frank's and I use Pitt. And as supporting characters for what's going on.
I actually love what you did with Holly and one of the newbies.
Oh, right, yeah.
That was great.
That was fun too, yeah. Holly was fun. But I mean, it's like I've already got all these supporting cast built, and that's the hard part to really build. I mean, because you get kind of used to building protagonist, antagonist, that becomes old hat, that's easy. Coming up with the good supporting characters, that's hard. And when somebody else has already done them, it's like, oh, okay, great, just call over to casting and have them send over a Franks. And you know, we'll use him to be a bit of a jerk and to do denouement stuff, and that'll be fun. And that's way more fun than having to do everything from scratch all on your own. You know, it's like Larry's already built this stuff, and I can just go over and use it because he gave me permission to play with his toys. That's awesome. Oh my gosh.
Jack.
Wonderful. Okay, so Problem Child again.
You really weren't that bad, Faith.
I felt like I was horrible.
Well, you keep saying it. He's making it happen.
You want it so badly, you're making it
I thought all you guys
Actually
were
came to life.
great. I think you guys were
Well,
easy
you
to work with.
didn't see everything that was going on between Brian and me behind the scenes. Saying,
Oh, good.
No, really. So, what the benefit of this world playing is that they gave us permission. You gave us permission to create new characters who were monster hunters. So I created 2 new characters, which was absolutely the most fun in the world because I got to use all of the existing, like what Jim was saying, all of the existing world and character creation concepts and come up with 2 new characters. And then I picked a character from Jane's past who was a real unpleasant human being and put him as a monster hunter who was not as good as the others and maybe needed to be taught some lessons in there too. And that was the most fun to me because I was able to play in this new world, this wonderful world for me that was a complete palate changer. What is it called when you drink wine?
Palate
You have
cleanser.
Yeah, palate cleanser, that's the word. So I got to cleanse everything and yet still bring in parts of my own world together. And that was the fun part for me, was not only satisfying other people, different panel, satisfying another writer.
Yeah.
That was part of the instructions. I told everybody to keep the sex to PG-13 because that's how the series set up.
So, not only, yeah, I know, I'm evil. A problem child, right? So not only that, I was able to bring in some of my characters and develop my own characters some. So that was a wonderful fun. Thank you.
And for me, I'm just going to use a bit of an analogy. Like when I'm doing my own writing, I don't know how many people like to shoot in here. Probably a fair number, I'm guessing. Just Larry, right? But basically, if you're shooting at a target with a pistol, you do speed shooting. You still hit the target, but you're not as concerned with, you want to get it tight, but it still hits the target. Writing for Larry and his world was like taking a sniper shot because you had a lot of boundaries you wanted to stay within, and and for me especially, I wanted to get it right the first time. Right, I had one shot, and so I took it. It seems to have worked out. But yeah, that was how it went.
Awesome. I'm just going to say, like, talk about problem children. I won't even say who the people were, but honestly, this group of writers was such a bunch of pros that the biggest problems we had were, compared to what I've heard from most anthologies, nothing. I had a few people who asked to do things. I was just like, nope, can't do that. Nope. No, you cannot flatten a major U.S. city. I have to say the flattenings of major U.S. cities for novels. I can't just do that and not refer to it. Actually, I'm going to turn on this question myself. I'm going to flip this around a little bit, and that this is my world in this case, and so it's a different perspective. Because I have written in a bunch of other people's universes, like Jonathan was talking about, we trade stories back and forth, and I have one coming out in his Joe Ledger Unstoppable. What, next month? Halloween, okay. Which I'm really excited for. I love this series, and it's a great series. If you guys haven't checked out, the first book is called Patient Zero.
Yeah.
Great series. Two of his major characters in this series are Mr. Church and Rudy, and the psychiatrist. So I thought it'd be kind of fun to do a story where Rudy does a psych eval of people from a mission, DMS mission that goes horribly wrong. So he has to do the psych evaluation of the one surviving member. And we were talking beforehand of different things. I was like, well, so what are some elements that you've not really hit in the series yet, or what are some things that are kind of untouched that I have a little room to mess around with? And Jonathan seemed like, because we've just done weaponized soul. He goes, we haven't done demonic possession. I was like, cool. Done. And so that's the direction I went. But it was different being on the other side of the table, having written a bunch of people's universes. I've heard some horror stories, but in this case, everybody we had was really amazing. And most of the stuff that I had to do as the continuity guy was either say, can't really mess with that, or that's not how that thing worked. It was usually pretty minor. I had in one case like, no, that character's actually not married, but it's not something I refer to in the series, so you wouldn't know. But overall, these guys were awesome. The thing I was talking about with Jim earlier with Holly was actually a hilarious thing that I hadn't really thought of, because one of the newbies starts flirting with her and sends her on his cell phone and sends her a naughty picture. And it was just, and I read that and I was like, it was so off the wall. I've never thought of that, but Jim did it. So I could totally see this character, who Jim established is kind of a jackass, sending a nasty picture to Holly. And I was like, that is so jerky. But it was such a thing that And I can't say how the story ends, but because, I mean, if bad things hadn't happened, Holly would have just killed him. But it was so funny, and something I didn't ever think of. And that's the beautiful part of this, was getting all these great ideas and great takes on things, that just stuff that I hadn't thought of. And just a different, unique perspective. And so I tell you guys, if you ever have your own world and you have an opportunity to open it up to other people and let them play in it, it's scary as hell, because this is your baby, but it's really rewarding. It's a lot of fun. Okay, so we're kind of cranking along here on time, and so what I want to do is I do want to take questions from you guys. There's a microphone here in the center. They're gonna fire up for us. So if you want to ask a question, just go get behind the line there. I will, however, tell you before you take questions, questions end in a question mark. Okay, they're not like a long rambling thesis. Okay, no, because I will bulldoze you. I have a reputation of hatred to keep up. So if you'd like to ask a question, just please come and get in line.
This is for you, Larry. I'm hearing about what a great time you had with them writing in your universe, but how was it for you to open your universe to other people? Because I know that can, for some authors, that's not turned out so great. Some authors, it turns out better. But what were your trepidations for opening your world?
Okay, so trepidations going in, it's frankly kind of terrifying. And I'm looking down, and I know some of these other guys have done this too, where they've opened up their worlds, and I'm seeing nods. It is frankly kind of terrifying. Because you're putting your baby in the hands of somebody else. And also, you invite people to anthologies that you like, because you know they're talented and you know they're skilled. But at the same time, you don't want to be mean to them if they screw up. And so you're really hoping that everything's nice, because ultimately you got to protect your thing. And so if these guys had done something horrible, I was going to have to shoot them down. And I really don't want to do that. But I see, I know Jim has opened his stuff up for gaming purposes. And when you do that, you're opening yourself up to like a whole slew of writers and a whole bunch of creative people. And Jonathan has opened up his main, your main thing. I mean, your main money makers are...
And also for gaming, I have a board game that
that's right.
I didn't write the rules for and can't win a game of.
So it's terrifying, right?
At least you can play yours. I can't play mine.
We're actually doing a Savage Worlds Monster Hunter, because we did a Hero System Monster Hunter. And I love Hero System, but it's way too crunchy for the non-accountants. So we're relaunching that with Savage Worlds. So okay, so let's get our next one.
First, I just want to say how exciting this is, because this is like my bookshelf coming to life.
Thank you.
Dust, please.
It all goes to feed my cat.
I consume your literature via audiobook, so I think several of you. So how involved are you in it, in picking the people reading these stories and bringing them to life? And secondly, Adam Baldwin on Tom Stranger.
Yes.
Flipping genius.
Boone.
Right. So we need more of that. But then, actually, to anyone, how much are you involved in picking the people that read your stories?
All right, I'll answer real quick on the specifics of this one. There is going to be an audiobook, which you don't always get with anthologies.
Right.
But Monster Hunter does super good in audio, so they were happy to do it. Oliver Wyman, who is the narrator for Monster Hunter International, the regular series, he will be doing most of the stories. But I think almost half of our stories have female narrators, and so we have a new narrator coming in for that. And I am so horrible at names. I've talked to her via email now a couple times, and I'm trying to blank on her name, and I'm so sorry about that. Because we also need to bring in a female narrator for Monster Hunter, because the next Monster Hunter novel is from Julie Shackelford's perspective. And so very specifically, so we will have an audiobook for this. It should come out about the same time. In fact, the other day, some of us on the panel got emails asking pronunciation questions from our narrator.
Yeah.
I know Jody had one.
Yeah.
Hitler.
Yeah, Jonathan's was pretty easy. It's like Hitler and Franks die. Squish. But for the rest of you guys, we take a shot at that. Like, talk about your process. Like, how much control do we get over audiobooks?
It's an evolution, because when I first started out, like my first audiobook came out, I didn't know it was on audio. I didn't know we had an audio deal. I just got an email from Peter Stroud saying something very foul because I knocked him out of the #1 spot. he's a friend, but even he doubted whether that I understood that, so we followed up with, just kidding. But nowadays, I get to pick my audio readers, and my go-to guy for a lot of my stuff is Ray Porter, who does all the Joe Ledger books, and he will be doing the Joe Ledger Unstoppable, so he'll be doing almost every story in that. So now I have 100% say that I didn't have even 5 or 6 years ago.
I wasn't aware of the choice process. My earliest books came out on double audio way back when they were on cassette, and it's progressed ever since. The fellow who did the Myth Adventures novels for me for Audible is a man named Noah Michael Levine, who is this nice, warm baritone who does know how to tell a joke and goes with my pronunciation guides. It so happens that when the last of the series got shifted to Tantor instead, they chose a narrator before I even knew about it. So I wasn't able to get Noah in there. And he said, you can request having it re-recorded with me. But I think of my choices, he understands my humor, he can read me well, so I'd like to use him in the future unless I have a female narrator in my stories.
I just real fast, I'm sorry, I just found the narrator, the female narrator. Her name is Bailey Carr.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Bailey Carr. Though except Jane Yellowrock will be narrated by your
Was
regular...
Christine doing it?
Yep.
Problem child! Christine Vam, it's H-V-A-M.
Audible loves this.
For me, the first audio deal I got, it was when the 4th book of the Dresden Files was about to come out, and I got a call from a nice lady who said she wanted to do an audiobook of the Dresden Files, of Stormfront. And what I heard when she spoke to me was, I want to pay for your family's health insurance for 6 months. So I was like, yeah, okay, that would be great. And then a couple days later, she called back and said, oh, and by the way, we're going to get the guy who plays the blonde vampire from Buffy the Vampire Slayer to read it. And I was like, that's cool. That's all right. And then she hung up and I did like the Snoopy dance. At which point I learned I had become old enough that I need to stretch out before I do a Snoopy dance. Yeah, so, really complicated process for me. These days when I'm writing something new, they'll send me a short list of people with an example of each one. And they'll say, now pick one of these, unless you can think of someone else. And what am I going to say? Oh, yeah, my extensive Rolodex of voice actors, I'll just hand you somebody.
Yeah, mine was fairly simple. I'm with a smaller publisher, and they'd said we're going with Audible. They reached out to a couple of folks who wanted to try out for it, basically. And there was one guy in particular that played me part of a chapter. I said, he's got it down, and that was it. It was really straightforward. So the one book is Chemical Burn is on audio.
Mine has been about like everybody else's, except when I started the Soulwood series, because Nell Nicholson Ingram is a backwoods hillbilly, self-professed, and from Tennessee. So the language of her family, the language of the polygamous church from which she has escaped, is very different from the Southern accents with which I am familiar, and certainly different from Christine's familiarity. So she went online and found all kinds of videos, documentary videos, and she would say, all right, which character sounds like which? And I got to listen and say, okay, at such and such a minute and second, the guy in the blue plaid shirt, that's her daddy. And at such and such a minute, that's her brother. And that was absolutely spectacularly fun. And then she said, okay, now what do I do when she stops talking church speak? I said, okay, now we've got to really play. And it probably took 2 or 3 days back and forth to get Nell's accent on, because when Nell's talking with people in her church, she talks one way. Because, honey, I can talk Southern. But I can also speak with a little bit more Midwestern accent, and that's what my character does. Mm-hmm. So she and I talked on the phone a long time to get Nell's accents, plural, down. And that was a hoot.
You'll notice that all of us are like really fond of the narrators that have done really good work for us. Because they're pros. They have a hard job. They work their butts off, and they're all good actors, but they can only act with their voice. They don't get to emote with their whole body. So these people, they're awesome.
Julie's baby better be safe.
Oh yeah, don't worry. Okay, that's when you end the book on a cliffhanger, everybody wants to kick your butt. Don't worry, the next one's coming. We're working on it.
I was fortunate enough to catch you here a couple of years ago, and we talked about a different aspect, and I wouldn't mind hearing maybe an update on what happened, where it stands, and what the future is. And I actually wouldn't mind, since I love all of your writings, hearing from all of you about that, because I know some of you who have already ventured into these territories as well, about, I don't know, what I think a lot of us would love to. I want to see the Monster Hunter series.
Oh, well, it's a TV show. Oh,
the TV
okay.
show, because I know AMC had.
I think most of us have gone through the ringer. I know Jim's had a show. Hollywood is a crazy town zoo of insanity and madness. And we don't, as writers, we option stuff, then we cash checks. But I have optioned Monster Hunter. I don't think option checks are awesome. And it's not pay your house off, but it's pay several mortgage payments. And so I have optioned Monster Hunter for a series to the Entertainment One, the folks who do Walking Dead. It's listed as in development.
That means nothing. Let me translate from Hollywood.
That's why the
means
reason I'm
nothing.
doing this.
Yes.
You might have gotten a check.
It ain't happening until there's nothing happening until the check clears.
Yep. So it's one of those things where, I mean, once in a great while they tell me something, but almost never. I mean, it's never. And just keep in mind, they option like 100 things for every one they actually make.
Yeah.
Though I know we do have somebody up here right now who has something kind of exciting going on. Is that still?
Well, yeah. There's Joe Ledger's in development for film. We're having advanced talks with Sony about it, but for TV rather. But also, there's news I can't actually say. It's friggin' huge, and they told me, I got the phone call right as I got off the airplane coming here about a streaming service that is about to make a substantial offer on one of my projects for a 10-episode first season.
Nice.
Yeah.
See, that's specific. If they write you a check and it clears, then you'll be good to go.
But they don't want me to drop the name of which thing it is. But let's just say I'm really friggin' happy. And you know the streaming service.
And we all love cash and checks.
We really, so does my wife.
See, I don't think the problem is that Hollywood is crazy all the time. But the way Hollywood operates is nothing happens, everything happens all at once.
You're right about
That is exactly how Hollywood does things. And the problem is that the people who are the professionals who are out there doing things live in that bubble of everything happens all at once, 24/7. That's where they live. And so everybody out there is under super high pressure. Everybody out there is trying to pull things together immediately and magically to get things done. Which, and for people who don't have to live in that kind of pressure, we kind of look at it and it's like, wow, that's just insanity. It's not. There's a method to it, but it's still, I mean, as far as the civilians are concerned, yeah, they're kind of crazy.
I did option Tom Stranger for a cartoon. Oh. That would be hilarious, but once again, don't bank on it.
No, some years ago, we had a Myth Adventures option. Right now, for anyone who's curious or who cares, the Myth Adventures keep going through a lot of people who say, yeah, we'd love to do something. A few weeks later, a few months later, nah, well, the funding fell through. But once we did have a really good offer, and they had divided the payments into 3 parts. One would, let's call the first one 1%, the second one payment 10%, and the third one 100%. They were multiples of a certain amount of money. And they were going to give us the first one on signing, and the second one on an initial pre-production, and then the third one when they began principal production, and that was the actual purchase of rights. And the funny thing is that they said, if we do not go through this, we want all the money back.
Oh,
and Bob and I said, have you read these books? What kind of turnips do you think we are? No, you can't have the money back, anything that you have given us. So our agents went back and forth on it, and they agreed that they would let us keep the first 2 payments. The third payment, yes, would have to be repaid. So, fair enough.
Just one quick thing to add. Sometimes, even when Hollywood pays you for something, doesn't necessarily mean, even if they purchase it, doesn't mean it's going to go on.
Right.
First, Disney bought a horror, science fiction, fantasy, entertainment news show idea from me and this friend of mine. They paid us good price for it. They paid us to write the show Bible. They paid us for scripts and everything else. Then there's a change of management, and the new guy coming in, it wasn't his show, died. We got to keep the money, which is great, but it died. And it would be a great show, but it wasn't his show.
Yep.
So.
Yep. It's weird.
Okay.
So one of my favorite things about the Monster Hunter series is the triumph over ancient malevolent evil by sweet, sweet modern firepower.
That's a tagline somewhere.
I love your choice of adjective.
It's good stuff. But the universe also does include, mystical objects, right? Magical artifacts. So my question to you guys would be, can we as readers expect to see a change in the tools used by the monster hunters and potentially more of those fantastic elements, or will we keep it grounded in realism of straight up explosives?
It's my answer to that is it's all going to come down to the point of view character in question. So you're like Owen, it's always going to come down to you putting a bullet in it.
Yeah.
Okay. Putting a boot on his head and then stabbing it a lot. But it's going to depend. We actually had some stories in this anthology where people went in different directions and used magical implements. Like Jody she had a magical creature helping out because it's STFU. Frank's actually had Jonathan had some rabbis involved in his. And then Quincy's is just straight up firepower. Jim's was not even guns; it was just punching. Jim's
Yeah, my character got recruited to be MHI's janitor by Earl when he survived a cage match with a zombie. He was in an organized crime cage match with a zombie, and he killed the zombie with his bare hands. And Earl was like, "Yeah, we need that guy."
I've heard that's a reliable career path.
Yeah. Cage fighting zombies. Yeah, there's one of two careers. So.
And then Jane is not human, or not fully. Well, kind of. Well, yeah.
Jane is what? I'm sorry.
I was going to say
Not fully human.
Not fully human.
Yeah, she's not fully human, so she can shapeshift into another creature when necessary. But that creature doesn't have opposable thumbs, and so there's no way to pull a trigger. So she has to change back to human to do the killing of the bad guys. So
Well, then, like Kim May's story, what she did is that she actually wrote a kitsune from Japanese folklore is the main character. And what it was is she's got her puff exemption. She earned her puff exemption working for STFU. She's earned out. And something bad happens in Portland, and where she's living now as a human being. And so the answer going forward in Monster Hunter will be yeah and kind of, it depends. So it just depends on the point of view character. So. Oh, and we got Vatican combat exorcists. Steve Diamond had a Vatican combat exorcist story, and this is awesome because he lived in Mexico for a long time. So he sets it in Sonora, Mexico, and it gets a little mystical.
Yeah, Vatican Combat Exorcist would be the greatest punk band name of all time.
Vatican Combat Exorcist.
Come on, we're gonna have to pull off a tactical exorcism.
Yeah, I did another story one time where the main character's name was his business card was Diego Santos, freelance exorcist.
Okay, since you guys all have your own universes with so many fun characters, if you guys had to do an ultimate team up using one of your characters and one of your other friends on this table's universe character, who would you want to use as a pair up?
Really?
Oh, that's cool. Wow. That's a good question.
Villain or heroes?
Well, me and Jonathan kind of already did that with the good guys at one point.
Yeah. Though I would like to have a sarcasm duel with Harry Dresden and Joe Ledger. I think that would be just a lot of fun. Just sitting in a bar being sarcastic back and forth to each other would be so much fun.
I would add Oz to that.
That would actually be awesome.
Dude, Harry Dresden goes to Oz.
No relation.
Oh, yeah.
The building was
because
on
he'd be
fire.
all like flying monkeys.
The building was on fire and it was Joe Ledger's fault. That would be awesome.
No, we're talking about the Myth Adventures Oz.
Yes.
I think he would be great in any sarcasm contest.
Oh, I'd want to have the Denarians hit Cazador. That'd be cool.
Oh, that'd be badass.
Yeah.
No, you can tell writer brains, because the way writer brains work is when somebody says something like that, and you know it's when all the writers go, yeah, I can write that.
Yeah, you can hear the little hamsters getting out of breath as they try and run the processor up higher.
And somewhere our agent suddenly felt the urge to take a stiff drink.
Larry, this sounds like another anthology.
Oh, by the way, there is going to be another anthology. Tony Weiss Coffin Band has already given me another contract. However, what she wants to do on this next one's a little bit different, and so I've not even talked to these guys about this yet, about follow-up stories. But you guys remember the old Larry, the Man Kazin Wars? Yeah. Well, what she wants to do is, this one I think we have like 18 short stories. So she wants to have fewer stories, but more like novella-sized.
Okay.
And so I've not approached any of these guys about doing follow-up stories yet, because...
I will.
Boom, done. There's one of them.
Me too.
See, look at that. This is how this is.
See how easy that was?
I wish Tony is out sick. I wish she was in the audience for this. Thank you, guys.
We can text Jim.
And so we're gonna do some, because just based upon the pre-release so far for this anthology has been really popular, and it's looking like it's going to do really well. So she's given me permission to do more. So yeah, next one's going to be, I think, 5 novellas put together, which is funny because a lot of these experienced writers, just so you know, they write long anyway. So it's like, okay, we were going to shoot for like 7,000 words, and they give me a 10,000 word story, and I'm like, thanks, guys. And if it's too long, you just go to the new guys, like, make your story shorter.
I know how to edit.
Hey, everybody wrote so long that your short stories could be 35 words.
No, thanks, guys. Yeah, but we're going to do another one. I'm really excited.
That sounds great.
Jimmy, you gonna do another janitor? You gonna do him again? He's awesome. He's a great character.
What's that?
You gonna do the janitor? He's awesome. Hey! Jody's character's still alive too. I mean, so we haven't done much in the 70s yet. Okay, cool. Sorry. Okay, we got time for a couple more questions, so we'll go fast. Go ahead.
All right, this is kind of a world question. I've seen a lot of other works, and you touched on it with the Metal Show, where monsters going out into public and like places like that. So I kind of wonder around DragonCon, what's the Atlanta Monster Hunter team having to deal with? Because Atlanta's crazy right now.
Okay. I actually thought about that because there is an Atlanta Monster Hunter team. It's led by a guy named Jay Boone, who is based on a friend of mine who was originally from here. Was a Special Forces guy. And I bet they're hopping during DragonCon. Seriously. I bet it's nuts. And if you've read Siege, I introduced Polly briefly as a character. Yeah.
One guy.
You know he's in the audience right now, in costume, wearing like probably a big square hat with like one hole for the eye. But yeah, there is. But I've never done much with the Atlanta Monster Hunter team except to establish there is one, and we've met a few of the characters from it. But yeah, I bet DragonCon is seriously hopping. I bet that weird crap goes down in the corners here. And I'm just talking monsters. I mean, just
and there's all like these hallways and weird things that they walk you through occasionally when it's too crowded. You know, when they've got to get you to your panel or something like that. Anything could happen back there.
You know what? Here's the worst part though. What would happen is there'd be like a horrible incident at DragonCon involving monsters, except the team would be stuck at the West End and couldn't make it across the
Roger, Romeo 9, you're on your own. We're on the other side of the parade.
Or this is where you send the puff exemption flying monkeys.
Grappling hook. Go ahead.
So this was kind of touched on earlier with like Jim's comment about Nicodemus and crew attacking Cazador. What would the biggest puff bounty creatures from like your different worlds probably? What kind of numbers would we see?
Oh. Puff bounties on the various creatures from these guys? Okay, actually,
Well, I think the Denarians are what they're like experienced vampire levels, probably.
yeah, so
I mean, Dresden's the one who's worth a lot of puff.
Yeah, Dresden, we're talking like mid eight figures, you know? I don't think, Earl would not take that contract. He'd leave that one to like the PT Consulting, you know? Potato tasting, he'd be like, we'll take care of you, Dresden. And you're like,
Good luck.
yeah, no, they're badass. I was actually thinking, in Jonathan's series, you hit on all sorts of friggin' things that would be very expensive.
7 Kings.
Oh,
7 Kings.
a lot. All the puff. Yeah, seriously.
Well, also Mother Night, I mean, in my 6th Joe Ledger book, she unleashed a zombie plague here at DragonCon. So, she can anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, that's kind of the point. How good is it?
See, that's why I go to DragonCon every other year. Yeah, actually.
My mythology series, I've run everywhere. All of them.
Oh gosh, for Jody stuff, we're actually getting into that god level stuff, where it'd be like, the puff would just have to be on an installment of like the GDP of a country. And I'm talking a good country, not like a crappy one.
Like Grenada.
Yeah, Grenada. It's out of luck, man. That's a good question. I don't know, man. How many, we got, okay, guys, we're almost out of time. So what I'm gonna do is, I'm sorry, I wish we could get the rest of the questions. I just, real fast, for the rest of you guys, you got a minute each. If there's anything you want to plug that you're doing at DragonCon coming up, or you got anything coming out that you want to plug, now is your chance.
All right, so for me, I'm actually hanging out at the 3rd floor, booth 817, with Bard's Tower. Larry's set up there, Sherry Kenyon, a bunch of us. Jody is there, Jim is there. So come on by. I've got books for you, Blood War Chronicles and Kemp, where you might dig it, please.
I'm doing a signing tomorrow morning at Missing Volume, 10:30 in the dealer's room, and I'll be signing copies of Knights of the Living Dead, the anthology I co-edited with George Romero, which is the last project he did before he died. So there'll be copies of that available.
I am running out of here as soon as this ends to the Missing Volume, which is booths 1400 or 1300, to sign with the Black Tide Rising gang. And yep, tomorrow, John Ringo's Zombie Universe. Tomorrow morning at 11:30, I have my official DragonCon signing under the stairs in the Marriott. And the latest thing out is young adult science fiction with me and Travis Taylor. And we're working on the second one, and I've got a whole bunch of other things in the process.
Some wonderful nerds from Dallas put together a fan film of the Dresden Files. It's set in the middle of the Vampire War and tells a story. It's Harry Dresden and like every character ever against Red Court vampires. And they spent about 2 years making it. They're very pleased with it. It'll be airing Sunday night at I think Sunday night at 10 in the West End. So if you want to check that out, come by. Oh, I'm not sure. It's in that hallway when you walk right in.